Hi, I'm Wendy Shakespeare and I'm the Senior Editorial Manager for Puffin Books. And I'm here to give you some tips on proofreading and getting your manuscript ready for submission. You'll have spent a huge amount of effort writing and editing the story, so it's worthwhile taking the time to ensure that it's also as error-free as possible and is presented in a format that is clear and easy to read. It's important to make a good impression from the moment an agent or editor first looks at your manuscript, and presenting it well shows that you've made an effort. What is proofreading, you might ask? How is it different from the work that you've been doing in drafting and redrafting your work? Well, proofreading is more about checking the spelling, grammar, and punctuation, rather than thinking about the ideas presented in your story. And because it needs a clear head, I recommend that you step away from your manuscript, even if it's just for a day or so, to give you a chance to breathe. You need to approach the text with fresh eyes, as it's easy for your mind to fill in missing words or skip over incorrect spellings. So there are various options with proofreading. You can print it out, as you might spot different things on paper, because you've been so used to reading it on screen. And I find that it's also helpful to use a ruler to read line by line. Now, this might seem like you've gone back to school, but I use this technique myself to slow myself down so that I don't miss anything. And if it's not practical to print it out, try reading it on another device, like a laptop or your phone, or zoom in on it on your computer. Either way, if you're using a screen, increase the zoom so you're only focusing on a few lines at a time. Again, this is what I do if I can't print something out. I might be using my tablet or phone, so I'll set it into landscape view like this and expand the text. In addition, read the text out loud or use your computer to read it aloud. It helps you to listen out for anything that sounds awkward or repetitive. Using the computer also helps you to hear words that might be spelled incorrectly, like thorough instead of through, or form instead of from. And as well as text-to-speech software, there are loads of nifty ways to use technology to check your text, like Word's built-in spelling and grammar check, or online tools like Grammarly. However, though these tools are really good at general checks, it's useful to bear in mind that these are just computer programs and they won't understand nuances and how you might want to use spelling, punctuation, or grammar for a particular effect. Now, if you don't feel confident about your own skills, don't worry. Don't be afraid to ask a friend. Some people really love finding typos. And don't worry if you're not sure about their feedback. Most suggested corrections will probably be straightforward, but I'd encourage you to chat to your friend if you're not sure about some of the other corrections they suggest. If your manuscript gets picked up by an agent or an editor, you're going to have to get used to talking to others about the nitty-gritty details of your text. Above all, remember that consistency is key. Check that character names and details and things like place names are all consistent throughout. So that's the basics of spelling, punctuation, and grammar covered. Do you need to look out for anything else? Yes. As I've mentioned, reading the text out loud or listening to it being read aloud can help you hear whether something sounds awkward or doesn't make sense. And more importantly, if you're writing a short chapter book, you need to make sure that the sentences aren't tricky to read out loud, because quite often grown-ups read these types of books to children, or children themselves might be learning to read and reading out loud themselves. As much as the text needs to be correct, it also needs to read smoothly. Now, there's a lot of support online to help with this proofreading stage. I would highly recommend visiting Louise Harnby's website. She has excellent resources, which includes a booklet telling you how to use words find and replace to clean up your manuscript, to get rid of double spaces, for example. And that leads us on to formatting. As I said, it's important to have a clean, easy to read document. Agents and authors and editors are super busy, so it's best to use a standard font like Arial or Calibri or Times New Roman, because you need to use a font that's available on all software. And also, kind of fancy fonts can be distracting. But be sure to check the guidelines for submission, as some agents or publishing companies might be really firm on how they want to receive submissions. I can't stress this enough. If you don't follow their guidelines, it indicates that you haven't made the effort to find out what they want. And it's also helpful to have a title page at the start of your document with your title of your manuscript, your name and contact details, like your email and phone number, and the date that the manuscript was submitted. I'll show you an example, but again, do check the submission guidelines. So my company uses Word as standard, and I'm going to show you some ways in which you can use formatting effectively. But I do believe that apps like Google Documents and Apple Pages should have similar formatting functions as well. And if in doubt, Google probably has the answer. So I'm going to share my screen and show you how you could format your short chapter book. So you've got your story, title, your name, phone number, email. If you've got an agent, put the name there and the date submitted. Now, it's best to use standard margin settings and A4 as your page size. So in Word, you can look at it with layout. And the margins are here in normal. Do not use narrow, because what it means is there's no room if the agent or editor prints it out to scribble down the sides. And same for you, if you want to print it out and look at it, there's no room for you to scribble on the sides as well. And as I said, use a standard font, and it can be anything from 12 to 16 point, depending on actually what your needs are in using the computer. But again, do check the submission guidelines. So what we have here is 12 point. However, I've seen that manuscripts in 14 and 16. And ensure that the size is consistent unless something needs to be deliberately bigger or smaller. If you're like, do you need a big shouty font? But remember, it still needs to be easy to read. Also, use double spacing, as it makes the text easier to read as well. So as you can see here, it's quite tight, but if we change it to double spacing, there we go, it's a lot smoother to read, and it just means that your eye has a lot more space, like white space, to take in, because these editors and agents are going to be looking at so many manuscripts that they'll probably have tired eyes, and you don't really want to make that worse for them. If you find it easier to have spaces between your paragraphs, do not use a manual line break like this, because it actually causes more work as well when you're editing and moving things around. Instead, I would recommend deleting them and changing it so that you have a line space between them. So you can do that in indents and spacing, and adding in spacing after. Now, this is what I've done here. Oh, no. And actually, if you want to, you can use nifty functions. So this is a code for paragraphs, and you want to get rid of the double ones and change them to singles. And you want to change them so that they've got formatting after it. And you can do it like this and replace all. Of course, it does mean that, it will change everything. Oh, and as you've noticed, this jumped back. This is because another thing that I always try to avoid using line spacing to create a page break. Instead, you are better off using the page break, an actual page break, because what it does is that it forces it to start on a new page, and you don't have to worry about adding text and things moving around. So as you can see here, this is what's happened, is that we've got lots of text, lots of line spaces and no page break. And if you move the text around, this is just going to move up and down with it. However, if you insert a page break, it will always start there no matter what. And I'm going to insert the same there. And so in terms of, do you need it to be indented or not? So I've had manuscripts come in like this, and I've had them come in like this with indents. I think either is okay as long as it's clear to read. However, you might consider formatting the text so it looks more like a published book like this. So I'll zoom in a little bit. And this means that you can indent all the text except for the very first paragraph of a chapter. And this chapter heading can go wherever you like, to be honest. And sometimes people will either use an actual tab. So if I switch on the view, oh, you can't see it there, but you can either have a tab where it's an actual character, or like Word will handily do is auto format it for you. So when you start new paragraphs, it always starts with the indent. And this is the usual way in the way that most manuscripts are submitted. And I'd suggest having the standard, your indent as standard, so everything is like this. Oops, no, that didn't work. So everything is indented, and then you can just clean up your indents when you finish. So actually what that did was set it all back to 1 character spacing, and you want this. And again, you can change all of the spacing. So if you want more space like this between paragraphs, you can do so. And as I said, it's really important to have page breaks. Now, don't worry if it ends up having a white blank page in it. Don't panic, just leave it, because agents and authors are used to seeing this as well. And again, if you're going to be adding more text, for example, you need to add more text here, you want that page break there, so that then you suddenly don't have your next chapter running on. Another nifty trick is to use heading styles to navigate your document. So one of the things that I could do is you can either apply it directly. So here we have heading 1, or you can use nifty find and replace. So match case, replace, delete, no formatting, and instead format with style heading 1 and replace all. Oh, and actually what it did was, because the word chapter was in here, it's replaced those two, but not to worry. This is something else that I find useful. So in View, if you go to navigation pane, you can actually also use it to see if your chapters are out of sync. So obviously it is here, and I'd recommend doing this at the very end because you might be moving things around until then, and then you can tidy it up. And another nifty thing that I've seen someone else use is having a little note at the start of their heading for the day, time, character, chapter action, all just to keep track of what's going on. And you can change that to heading 2. And again, because I made them all heading 1, it's easier to see in this view, but you might need to do it in your document. But it means then at a glance, you can just see what is going on, and it's just useful to help, especially if you have a slightly longer book. And as you can see here, there's a little star. So this is used to indicate a section break, which is useful if there's a shift in the narrative point of view or a lot of time has passed between scenes. And I find that this is the clearest and easiest way to show this, is just a star will do. I mean, if you wanted to add an extra space, you can do, or have lots of stars like this, that's also fine. But essentially, it's useful to have so that they know, the person reading it knows that there's a break in what's going on. And also, despite what you might have been taught at school, it is only 1 space after full stops. You don't need 2 spaces because that's like an overhang of the typewriting era. And one final important thing to do is to ensure that you've got page numbers, which I don't have here, but I'm now going to show you. That's so that people can see where they've got up to when they're reading a manuscript. And also, it's incredibly helpful if you've printed the whole manuscript and accidentally dropped it. It's nigh on impossible to put those pages back in order if there's no page number. Believe me, that's happened to me. And so it's as simple as saying insert page number like this, and there you go, it just sits there at the bottom of the page. So all this mainly relates to short chapter books, but what if you've written a picture book? I would recommend following the same guidelines for margin, font, and page numbers. And actually, I just suggest presenting the text in whatever way will make it easiest to read, to get the feel for your picture book. So here's an example. Again, title page as before. And you can present it like a poem, like this, or short text blocks. There's no need to add page breaks as if you're writing an actual picture book. But feel free, if you want to help with the reading experience, adding in little line spaces like this to, again, reflect how you want the story to be read. And feel free to add notes for illustrations in square brackets, say, like this. So bear disappears. Or you could say, oh no, it's not bear disappears, it's bear appears. And, you know, to make it look a bit easier to see that it's different from the text, you can style it grey, so it's just there. Perhaps that's a bit light, so you want something like this. And these notes can go in between the text, or you can put them at the very end. However, that's only if you want to include these illustration ideas. Most picture books that come my way are just the text. And I think that's pretty much it covered. I've gone through a lot, but I'd like to stress that all you have to do is try your best. You're submitting your work on the merit of your amazing story. This is all just extra stuff to help you along the way. And I think that all that leaves me to say is I wish you the very, very best of luck with your submission to the Jericho Prize. And who knows, I might end up working on your book one day. So good luck and happy proofreading and formatting.